what I'm loving about what I'm seeing within our industry too is that these agencies aren't afraid to share what they're doing with other agencies and their competitors, right? And so it's almost like our independent agents are starting to come together.
This is the Insurance Technology Podcast, where we bring interesting people from across the insurance ecosystem to discuss and debate technology's impact on the industry. Join us each episode for insights and best practices from industry stewards and tomorrow's innovators. Now, here's your host, Reid Holsworth.
All right, we're back again with Bobbie. In this episode, we get deep in the weeds talking about adoption, specifically around agency technology. It's interesting that agents, even when they buy technology, it's not really adopted. And that comes from inside. You know, you see a lot more in the smaller agencies because they're more nimble and they can kind of push back. Larger agencies, if the top adopts it, typically they push it down. But here's the funny thing. In all of it, everybody pushes back because they don't sometimes see the value of this. Look, if I'm sitting down at a restaurant and I order chili cheese fries with onions and jalapenos on it, guess what? They have a very sophisticated point of sale system. I'm going to most likely always get that consistent thing that I ordered every single time. And that doesn't mean that the server goes away. It just means that server is there to provide more value to me as the patron in this example. And then the owners of the company can depend on that consistency of their staff. That's what sets them apart. So stay tuned. It's a great episode.
You're in this world. You know a lot of the insurtechs. You know a lot of the startups. You know a lot of the big vendors. What do you foresee impacting 2022 and 2023? Like, what types of technologies do you see really having an impact now and in the future?
So I think the single entry multi-quote small commercial, the adoption and utilization rates are going to start to increase, right? Right now it's early adoption. A lot of the agencies are just starting to operationalize some of this stuff. I think that will definitely have an impact on how small commercial is placed with carriers. And the carriers that don't have API connections are going to start to see an impact to their small commercial books. As some of these large networks and independent agents really operationalize these tools within their operations. And Reid, the other piece too that I think is going to start to come to fruition probably end of 22 into 23 is all of the data that we're going to get out of all of these insurtechs that are being operationalized. We're collecting data in ways we never did before. Mm-hmm. We're going to be able to get some insights, whether that's through like an Aureus Analytics and the work that they're doing, right? And being able to stack some additional data into some predictive models on consumer behavior and agency behavior that will be able to drive our business into different directions than what we may go today based on instinct, right? And the qualitative research that we're doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. But again, to your point, you got to have the pipes, right? Yeah. They have to be using it. They have to adopt. And you know what's funny, going back to small commercial thing, because we deal with this and we're dealing with this now. So IDP, we're promoting that, doing a lot there. And it's funny to watch the numbers on adoption with the agencies. It's like the agencies still haven't found total value. And I talked to guys like Raghav and Philippe and all these dudes and, you know, Ilya, and like the agencies are still not really adopting it on the commercial line side as much as like personal line. Personal lines is the only way you do business. I mean, since I started as an agent, that's like what we did. We use those, you know, comparative rating tools, right? But it's funny, like, why are they not? It's as a former agency owner, I can see how much more efficient it is for my organization to enter once and to quote multiple. But it's just, you know, the people, the users don't see that, right? Am I wrong in saying that?
Reid, no, I don't think you're wrong. Here's the thing, like in a typical agency, your CSRs and your producers, they have relationships with, carriers, and they're used to going into certain portals, right, to rate stuff. And they have a pretty good idea of appetite. So changing human behavior is hard. It's really hard. And so I think two things. One, agency leaders, principals, network leaders, there's going to have to be a concerted effort into kind of forcing that into the operations, whether that's through incentives, or, really setting up a process of expectations on this is how you're going to do business because it's going to be more efficient. But I also think that, even from Raghav's side, his team is working hard on showing the value, right, of being able to do a single entry multi-quote. And Reid, I think there's still a little bit of friction in that process, right? While like a Tarmica and a SMC and, a Talage, they're getting more mature. I think that they're working on streamlining their processes too. So I think all of it's going to come together over the next year. But with every single Insurtech tool that Becky and I have been working with our agency plant on, the operationalizing portion is the hardest part. It's easy to sell the tool. It's easy to, get the contract signed, but actually getting it in the agency and being utilized to its fullest extent, that's where the difficulty is really coming from, right? So I think that's the next step in the maturation journey of this entire change. If you think about change management, is the actual execution of it, and how do we get better at accelerating these sorts of changes and integrating them into the daily operations of an agency and a carrier alike.
You think as a whole, this is like a thought, you think as a whole, the industry and the agencies, although technically most of them smaller businesses as far as a number is concerned, and you're right, it starts at the top. Do you think that as an industry, agencies, they don't really see the value of operational efficiency in some of this stuff? It's kind of like, well, if it's not broke, don't fix it. I mean, Mary quotes the deals, we get the leads, and all is fine. Like, why do I need her process and change her behavior and mandate as the owner of the agency, mandate that you do this because it helps you be more efficient? I don't know, like, it's kind of like, why, right? You're right, it's behavior, but I think it's more than that. It's I don't know,
Well, people like to they want to have value, right? And they want to make sure that they stay relevant within their role. And in many ways, lots of agents feel that their value proposition is service and how they service their clients, right? Technology is really starting to take over the servicing piece. So I think in some ways, agencies need to take a step back and look at their value proposition and their strategy. Like, what is going to be their value prop moving forward? Because servicing is going to be largely taken care of by technology 5 years out, right? Self-service for endorsements and all the things that their agency staff does. But then how do they help their staff see that frees them up to do other things that are more valuable for their clients and create a value within their roles? And that's going to be that transformation that I think will help. So a CSR doesn't see their value in entering quotes into 4 different systems to get to get BOP quotes. It's entered in once, but maybe they can start selling, right? And learning.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So it's kind of summing that up. Your theory on this is a little bit job security for the boots on the street, right? Not necessarily on the street, in the office, really, on the servicing side. It's just, they're afraid that this is going to make me much more efficient. Therefore, I'm not going to be able to do that much more. And to your point, it's really educating and working with them, because you're right. Like, as a serial entrepreneur, the way I always look at things is like, efficiency means that then you can go and focus on things that drive revenue to the organization, right? And it also means I don't have to go and hire 80 more CSRs next year to keep up with all the deals that the producers are putting down. Because I can keep the same staff, but also I can help that staff augment that time they've been spending on all these redundant tasks and drive more revenue to the organization, which means more for everybody. And it also means that I can even pay my people more, right? And so yeah, but it's like, I always kind of wonder, people aren't really as a mass, because there's a lot, 30 some thousand agencies, depending on who you ask and you talk to, that are out there. Average user size, at least it used to be, I'll have to fact check me after this, but average user size from when I was doing the tech canary side was around 5 people across that, right? And so they're not big businesses. And so you get it. It's, think of 5-person organization. They're just, trying to get stuff done and get through the day each day. To implement and push a new product, new thing, that's a lot of extra work. And then to your point, it's the job security side. Well, then what's Mary going to do? That's what she does. She's the best at going in XYZ portal. She knows that thing inside and out.
Yeah.
Right. But you're 100% correct. I mean, as a consumer personally, I have very complex insurance needs. I tell you what, I love that. I'm not going to say who, but my carrier has a direct way to go in and make the policy change. As I'm purchasing a new vehicle, I'm like, oh yeah, here you go. Boom, it's done. There's my ID card, the whole 9. I also like that I don't have to carry my ID card in the car, things like that. And so, but would I switch to someone where that I can't do that? Probably not. Because it's important to me, because I don't want to have to wait or call or deal with this whole thing. Right. And I have switched from agents because of that, and so me as a consumer, I want to be efficient. Right. So this is stuff everybody's been talking about for years. It's just, I love just getting into the nitty gritty here of what is the real problem. And it's top of mind for me right now, because we're pushing adoption and we're seeing it, especially on the small commercial space. We see the traffic, and it's funny. It's not as much as you'd think. And that's because the end user doesn't really see the value, or maybe they do, they're just not pushed to do so. And then for us to do the things like you just said a little bit ago about really taking that data and using that data to take this to a whole nother level, we can't do that unless there's adoption on some of these things,
Well, Reid, I compare this in my own life to even the pandemic. Prior to COVID, there's no way I would have gone on an app and ordered groceries and just drove up and let them throw it in the back of my car. Like, I like to go into the store and feel my produce and make sure that, I picked out the best apples and, looked at the meat sales and, which meat looks best in the case and pick out which meat I wanted. But that process became so efficient for me that I still love it. Right. Like but I was forced into having to do it. And now that I was forced into having to do it, it's so much more efficient on my time and my money. I'm not spending as much with, random, checkout line purchases at the last minute. So even Target too, like I would go into Target and spend $400 when I needed to spend $50. And now if I do the drive up, I'm just spending $50. So it's more efficient and effective, but I was forced into that. So I think in many ways our industry needs to be forced into it. And then they'll start to see the value. And that's where I think the leadership at agencies will be very helpful in helping us operationalize some of this stuff, because otherwise we're just going to continue to do what we've always done, because that's what we know and it's easy.
When we had Tech Canary, we originally we released in 2013. I would sell that product to anybody. I mean, they'd come to me, I'd be like, 1 user. What can you afford? How much money you got? Let's do this. And but as we grew and we started, bringing on a lot of customers and we started watching all the numbers, we stopped selling to less than 10 employees, right? The reason why was because the attrition was terrible. And the reason why the attrition was terrible was because of the adoption. And so what happened is that the agency owner would buy the new shiny object, which was our product at the time, until they thought for this specific use case, right? And then they didn't mandate the adoption and push the adoption. Funny story. It's kind of a weird story, but kind of funny. When I was a kid, I sold freaking Kirby vacuums door to door. This is a fact.
That's awesome.
So, but I learned a lot of sales tactics doing that. Let me tell you, knocking on somebody's door and trying to sell them a vacuum, you learn some pretty good sales skills. But one of the things I always thought was so interesting. So those Kirby vacuums, hopefully Kirby doesn't come after and try to sue me for this comment, but they're super heavy and they're a little bit cumbersome. Badass. The thing looks like a 57 Chevy, like literally like big and steel and like, cool, whatever. But it's heavy, it's big, it's all this. So one of the things we would do is we would always take the vacuum with their existing vacuum. Okay. Now, even if they didn't want to give it up, we'd buy it. We would lose money on our deal. We wouldn't lose money overall, but we'd pay, an ungodly amount for what that thing's worth. It's worth maybe $10, and we how much do you want? $200? Done. The reason why we did that is because it forced them to have to use the vacuum.
Yeah.
And so, because what would happen is they'd be like, "What? Like, I don't understand how to do this thing." Forget it. I just got to vacuum the floor, right? And then they go and grab a tried and true vacuum, and then they weren't using the new shiny thing, right? And so then they would attrit it. And so a lot of that is removing and taking away the existing vacuum and mandating. It's kind of a funny analogy, but it's true. It's a real thing.
Yeah.
Mandating that they leverage the new technology. And so our problem was they weren't adopting it, and also too, to be fair, it was a pretty sophisticated product to get into, and there was a lot you could do. And so they saw the light of, wow, this could do so much cool stuff for my company, right? But if you don't adopt it, doesn't do anything, and you just wasting time and money. And this is what I tell people all the time. We'd have agents that call me and be like, "Oh, I need like the best, the best, the best." It's like, what's your book of business right now? It's almost nothing, dude. You know what you need to do? Use a freaking spreadsheet right for now, right? And people, I say this all the time. People are like, "Oh, you can't say that." Whatever. Use a freaking spreadsheet. You know what? Go close deals, because that's what matters right now, right?
Yeah.
When you're ready to leverage these technologies, use them and adopt them to the fullest, and mandate that your team does so, right? It's going to help you and the industry in so many levels. We all struggle with this at the top level. And it's funny because we all know, this, Bobbie, you have very sophisticated agencies that are out there. This is the other side of the spectrum that drive a lot of this innovation. They do. And they're like, dude, like my former product guy at Tech Canary, he's actually at Ivan's now, runs our data and analytics products. Thorsten Camp, he was an agency owner. And Thorsten, he lived in San Francisco. Thorsten would call me and just hammer me. He's like, "You need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this." And you're very sophisticated as an agency, right? And so he helped drive a lot of innovation. I ended up being like, "Whatever, dude, you're so good. Why don't you come and work here and you can fix it all?" And so he did. But it's that kind of mindset. So that's the other side of the spectrum, right? I've been just out and about, just meeting people like, "Oh, hey, you own an agency?" And I'm like, "That's cool. What management system do you have?" "We don't use that. We're never going to use that." And I'm like, "What?" I get it. I've used the analogy before. Agencies, using like a paper ticketing system, like a restaurant. You're a little, food cart. You don't need the most robust point of sale system out there. But as you get to scale, you need these tools to help manage the team. Like you said, Bobbie, the technology is taking on, and designed and adopted correctly, the technology is taking on that lift for you. It's supposed to help you. It's supposed to drive real ROI, return on investment, for the company. And so I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but I love talking about this stuff, and it's funny. It's just that, right? Isn't it? Adoption. The tools are there, sure. Some of these newer tools that are out there, and especially since technology has moved so fast in the last few years, some of these things have some jagged edges on them. Let's be real. They're not perfect. Not everything is perfect. Some of this stuff is really old. Some of the systems that everybody on the agency side is using today, some of these systems were designed 30, 40, 50 years ago, right? It's crazy. And they're changing, they're innovating, they're doing all kinds of cool stuff. So I get it. It's not all, roses and sunshine, however you say that. We get that. But properly leveraged and properly adopted within the organization, it drives real ROI. And so anyways, I know I'm going off, but I don't know, what are your thoughts?
No, I'm following you. And what I will say is there are some agencies that are doing it very well.
Yep.
And what I'm loving about what I'm seeing within our industry too, is that these agencies aren't afraid to share what they're doing with other agencies and their competitors. Right. And so it's almost like our independent agents are starting to come together just to figure out how are they going to continue to stay relevant moving forward as everything's changing around them. So I think there's agencies, and I can think of, 4 of them specifically off the top of my head that Grange does business with, that are kind of blazing the trail and they're setting the example. And Reid, what I love about it too is they're operationalizing things so well that they're starting to see the synergies between, 3 or 4 Insurtech platforms with the data process, right? So those things are all coming together, and I think they're going to start to gain market share. And that might be, again, I think fear of loss drives behavior more than opportunity does still. So I think once they start to gain more market share, that will wake up some of our agents to really push the operationalization of some of these new tools that we have used.
True. It's funny because you're starting to see a lot more of that. I won't name names, but like there's technology platforms now that are trying to get agents together to share their data together. Like that's crazy, right? Yeah. It's cool, but like to think about that, like I'm going to share my data with one of my competitors so we can get smarter about all of our collective businesses. That's pretty freaking cool, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
the new type of aggregation, right? Agencies have come together in the past for, aggregation of profit share or, market access or sometimes perpetuation planning, but this is the new generation, I think, of agency aggregation is coming together to share your data to get deeper insights on how can we all become better collectively, right? And that's really cool. It's really cool.
It is. I love talking about this stuff. So you're real busy. You got a lot going on. What's the biggest thing you're working on right now? One of the biggest.
The biggest API strategy.
Okay. I love this topic.
Yes, API strategy is the biggest thing that we're working on right now. Really trying to not only think about it from like an architecture technology standpoint, but then roadmap, right? Where are we going to get our biggest lift in our ROI, and what order and what sequence, Reid? So that from the next 12 months, that's going to be a lot of my work. And a lot of that is informed by our largest partners, right? And our best agencies. So what does your strategic roadmap look like? And then we need to start making choices on where do we invest to make sure that the partners that are going to drive our growth moving forward, we have the capabilities and the tools to be where they want to be, right?
It's interesting. I remember first person that I met that was kind of in that world is a guy we all know, Raymond Lynch, when he's at Liberty, and he was like digital distribution, right? Like what? That's a thing.
Yeah.
I've been through CoverWall. It used to be one of my customers, right? And so like they're working like, and so it's like digital, distribution. Wow, right? And that's them. And now it's like that's been a thing for a bit. But now it's the API strategy and what you're doing with that, right? Yep. It's like digital distribution is kind of like table stakes to some degree. It's becoming that. Now it's hard to get there if you don't have a real API strategy. As we're going out in market on IDP, it's amazing. And everybody will tell you this. It's amazing how many carriers don't have APIs, none. And they don't have a strategy. And they're like, we know we should do something about that, but we technically have not done anything around this, And so it's awesome that you guys are really focused on that and you're going after it. And for you to be leading that is pretty cool. It's pretty awesome.
It is cool. It is pretty cool. It's very exciting times because I do think that the carriers that do their API strategy correctly are going to be able to scale very quickly. 3 to 5 years from now, once we get through this evolution that we're sitting in today, and be creative on how they grow their books of business. Whether that's direct to consumer or whether that's through the independent agency force, I think there'll be room for everybody to play in different ways. Right. And so I'm super excited to be in the role that I'm in and in the industry that I am now, because this is where I get like insurance junkie, passionate, like driving change in ways that are going to help everybody succeed. It really makes me excited. And that's where I get my mojo from, Reid.
It's really fun. I say it time and time again. It's a good time to be in this industry, especially on the technology side. So much cool stuff. And like you said, you're driving real change in the industry, and you're helping people achieve their goals, leveraging technology in ways. It's really cool. It's this kind of Insurtech revolution, right?
Yes.
That's happening. And you're one of the people that are really involved in it. But let's be real. It's still a small crew. It is.
Yeah.
That are actually affecting change,
Yeah.
that are doing things that are really solving bigger problems for the industry. There's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of people that are involved in it, but ones that are really affecting change, right? Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say. And one of the lines I use with Becky a lot is like, I'm just sick of talking about it. Like whatever the topic is, like, let's stop talking about it. Let's start doing something about it. Right. So if we're talking to a potential Insurtech vendor, I'm like, we've had too many conversations and no action. Like, I think we just kill this and we move on. Right. And so that's where to your point, the shiny pennies, okay to explore the shiny pennies, but don't invest too much time if you're not going to get an ROI on it.
That's right. That's right. Say that time and time again. And just talking about that stuff endlessly on things that aren't going to drive ROI is a waste of everybody's time.
Yes.
Maybe not the one that's got the startup, right? That's out there promoting it, but you have to solve real problems. And we talk to a lot that aren't really solving problems. Sexy, cool in some ways, and it's neat. Some of it's way ahead of its time, right? And there's been a lot of vendors that were very ahead of their time, and they don't get the credit that they should for what they've done for the industry even now. It's the newer, shinier companies that are getting a lot of the credit, but there's been some people that have been doing this for quite some time and are really good at it.
Yeah.
And it's funny because you'll talk to them, you'll be like, oh yeah, what about this company? And they're like, what, who? They don't even know. It's like, dude, that's like one of your competitors. They have thousands of customers, whatever it may be, right? Like, seriously. And but they're living in a little bit of a bubble in some ways around some of this stuff. And yeah, if everybody finished what they started, we'd be in a much better place, right?
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
So this was awesome. So go ahead. You say something?
No, I'm waiting. I'm anticipating your question. I feel a question coming on.
Question is, who else should I interview on this podcast? Who would you recommend would be good for to be on here? I ask everybody. We love to hear the names of people.
Yeah, so I think if you haven't talked to Becky Monfrey on my team yet, she would be a wonderful person for you to have a conversation with, because she has agency, underwriting, sales, digital, Insurtech background. So she has that full circle, and it's fun to talk to. You mentioned Ray Lynch. If you haven't talked to him on the podcast yet, you definitely should have a conversation with him. Yeah, I love Mike and Alan. You've interviewed them a couple of times. Raghav and Chris Lane at Tarmaca are really good guys to talk to. Brian Felchek, I enjoy talking to him. He has a little bit different perspective, but it is really, trying to help drive change in our industry as well. So those are a few off the top of my head that I can think of.
Awesome. So what do you do for fun, Bobbie? What does Bobbie like to do for fun?
I love to travel, which plays well with my role and my job, which is great. I'm a hiker. I'm a softball mom and coach.
Nice.
I used to play myself, but I hung that hat up a few years ago, just because my schedule doesn't allow. I also really like to fish, and people don't necessarily know that about me, but
I didn't know this. Like, what type of fish? Like bass fishing?
I grew up walleye fishing on Lake Winnebago in Wisconsin.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Even doing some tournaments. Can you hear the lawnmower behind me? I'm sorry if you guys can hear.
Yeah, a little bit.
A little distracting.
All good.
in sturgeon spearing in February in
Oh,
Wisconsin.
no kidding. I've never done that. That's pretty cool.
Oh yeah, you have to try.
So then you ice fish?
Ice fish, yes, not as much as I used to, just because I'm getting less tolerant of the cold. Downhill skiing though is also a big winter sport for me and my kids. So
Oh, nice.
we just try to be outside, Reid, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I love the outdoors, as you know. The fishing thing threw me through the loop. I love fishing. I love flats fishing. That's my favorite forte. I lived in Florida for quite some time, at a place down in the Keys, and like, I just love fishing the flats. And for me, it's not even about catching the fish per se. Like, I was just out in Montana a couple weeks ago, and a bunch of buddies did this fly fishing trip. It was amazing, but it's just being out there and just enjoying the outdoors. And yeah, taking a few fish down here and there is cool, but it's just like you said, just stuff outside, right?
Yeah. Well, and there's a thrill of catching a fish that fights for a while, right? Just the barracuda that I caught, I think it was in Mexico, was probably like a 45-minute fight.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Just landing that is just so much fun, right? Like that sense of accomplishment and the adrenaline rush. It's amazing.
Yeah, I over the last couple of years, I really got into, and I'm still really into it, is spearfishing. I love spearfishing and free diving. It's so good, and being underwater, holding your breath, targeting a fish, shooting it with the spear gun, and then bringing it back up. And hopefully you don't get eaten by a shark, as
I was gonna say,
which I have stories around that, and it has almost happened. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. And you're right, the fighting the fish. I don't have a big long fight fish story actually. I've gone for big billfish in the past. One of our customers owns a big agency, has a awesome boat in Key Largo. If they're listening, they'll know what I'm talking about. Been out a bunch with them. I swear I'm bad luck on the boat because we never get anything when I go. But hoping to do so. So yeah, we'll have to do that sometime, Bobbie. We'll
absolutely
throw water and do some of that. So last question I love to ask: what do you like to drink? What's your favorite drink?
Like
alcohol.
Okay.
Oh, if you drink alcohol.
Yeah. So the handle that I end up buying the most often is Kettle One. And typically, I think you like these too. My favorite is a dirty martini.
I love dirty martini. Yeah.
Yeah, with olives stuffed with something. Blue cheese is probably my favorite. Yeah.
Dirty.
Yes.
Dirty up. Yeah.
Dirty. Yep. Extra. I typically will order them extra dirty too. I love olives. Super yummy. Yeah. So, and I really do like tequila too, but I've learned to stay away from that just because fun stuff happens when you drink tequila.
I've come to figure out recently that doing shots of tequila is just not my jam. It doesn't, as I've gotten older, it just doesn't sit right. I just and it's a little gnarly, but
a good margarita. I think you guys actually talked about this maybe in one of your last podcasts, but when I met Ray Lynch, Mike and Alan introduced me to him at Dig In Austin, and we were doing ranch waters and Mexican martinis.
Yeah.
And those are both really excellent drinks too, if you get yourself down to Texas and want to try something new.
I know we were talking about that. I've never had a ranch water, so that sounds awesome. Yeah. I'll have Ray Lynch on. Maybe we'll have one together. So look, well, hey, thanks for joining. It's really awesome. We got deep in a lot of topics, so it was really, really good. And thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, appreciate the invite.
Yeah, awesome. So till next time, I'm sure we'll have some dirty martinis, maybe a ranch water, maybe some Kettle One in some way or another. It's some.
Well, you're not that far away from me, Reid. So I
know. We got to do that more.
Have a drink.
We really do. Wow, well, that was awesome. Isn't Bobbie great? It's interesting what came out of that one, right? When you talk about adoption and you think about things that have affected our everyday lives, like how we buy groceries now,
Who knew? I mean, that stuff's been going on for a long time. There's been a lot of companies out there that have been doing this literally for a very, very long time. 50 years, right? But now it's become a serious thing that people had to adopt because their environment changed and it kind of became a mandatory thing, right? There's a lesson to learn there. Similar to the vacuum analogy, which it's kind of funny, I came up with that, but it's very true. Taking the vacuum away and saying, no, use the new thing, you have to use the new thing, forces people to use it in a way. And guess what? They'll discover that it is much more efficient. It is much better. You know, I don't know. I don't remember the last time I went to the store at the time of this recording. And I used to love going to the store, picking out all the things and the stuff and whatever. And sure, it's still nice to maybe go and do that, but I'm a busy guy. It's much easier. Spend more time on the things that I want to spend time on that are more important to me than that simple task, right? Now, only if they could deliver gasoline to my cars, come out here and fill up the tanks. Man, I hate getting gas. But look, Bobbie, that was awesome. If you see Bobbie out there, take a dirty martini, mix it with a ranch water, and ask Bobbie to go sturgeon fishing up in northern Wisconsin. You guys will have a grand old time. Stay tuned to the next episodes. Good stuff coming up.